Heart-wrenching moment. Little girl shouts for help. Bikers. Incredible act transforms everything. Emily sat quietly on the park bench, her colored pencils scattered around her like fallen autumn leaves, each one a tiny fragment of her world. The golden sunlight filtered through the branches, casting shadows that danced upon her drawing. This tranquil scene felt like a cherished memory, yet every brush of her pencil reminded her of the aching absence of her father, gone just months before, as if the bright colors could fill the void left in her heart. Her mind raced with thoughts of what he would say about her drawings, the stories that erupted from the depths of her imagination. But all too quickly, those dreams twisted into a knot of doubt that tightened around her chest. Could she really be the hero she so often sketched? Would her drawings ever gain the recognition they deserved? Caught in this whirlpool of self-doubt, the calm of her afternoon shattered. A horrific commotion erupted. The echoes of a child's scream pierced through the air. Emily's heart jolted in her chest. A frantic boy was backpedaling, eyes wide with fear, as a stray dog lunged at him, snarling and snapping. Instinct took hold as she surged to her feet, her voice trembling but unwavering. "Help! Somebody help!" she shouted, fingers trembling, caught between the desperation to assist and the terror of being ignored. Just as panic began to settle, the roar of motorcycle engines filled the park like a thunderstorm. The rebellious riders, a group notorious for shaking up the town, burst into view. Their leather jackets and tattoos had always frightened her. They seemed so far removed from her gentle sketches and quiet dreams. Yet they sprang into action, their grim expressions shifting as they recognized the scene, their raw energy transformed into a singular purpose. Emily watched in awe as they chased the dog away, securing the boy's safety. She couldn't help but feel an ember of admiration flicker within her, a connection forged in that split second of courage and fear. Before she could process all that had just happened, the harsh realities of her own struggles returned, bearing down on her like the cold shadows creeping over the bench. What would they think of her? Who was she, a shy girl with little experience, to step into a world with motorcycle gangs, boldly facing rejection and doubt from peers already more accomplished? It wasn't just the bikers she feared disappointing, it was her father's memory, woven through every line she drew. Her anxiety swirled, feeding the doubts that whispered lies about her abilities. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As Emily faced the boy later, a blending of relief and painful echoes from the confrontation flooded her mind. What if she never got the chance to show what she could do? What if her drawings, her real emotions, her love for her father were never good enough? The buzzing uncertainty danced in her veins, heightening the pressure in her chest. She shivered as the thought of entering the local art contest loomed ahead like a cliff's edge, majestic yet terrifying. With the biker's sudden presence, she felt the tiniest seed of hope. Someone believed in her spark. But what if that spark flickered out because she stumbled? Each hesitation sent waves of distress crashing against her thoughts. The contest would be her chance to honor her father, yet also felt like a tightrope walk over an abyss. Something had to give, and as she stood before that looming stage, the path to self-discovery lay ahead, fraught with obstacles and overshadowed by doubts that clung to her like mist. Would she crumble or find the strength to face both her dreams and the judgment that came with them? The following weeks blurred in a haze of anxiety and determination. The art contest loomed like an unreachable star. Its presence was both a light guiding her and a shadow haunting her every move. Emily found herself sketching more fervently, pouring her grief and admiration for her father into every stroke. Each drawing evolved, layers of color and emotion intertwining. Yet hovering over them was the persistent question. Was it enough? Every Sunday, Emily returned to that same park, her makeshift studio sprawling across the bench, with colored pencils nestled between roots and stones. The peculiar laughter of the children mingled with distant echoes of motorcycle engines, a sound that seemed to awaken both admiration and fear within her. She would catch fleeting glimpses of the rebellious riders, the image of courage against chaos. They represented a raw, unapologetic authenticity, something she craved more than she would admit. The respect she felt towards the bikers fueled her resolve. She longed to capture not just their exterior, but the depth of character she sensed hiding beneath the tough appearances. As her pencil glided across the paper, she began to shift to sketch them not as mere figures, but as stories waiting to be told. With every completed drawing, her confidence shifted just a fraction closer to acceptance. But doubt is a stubborn companion. The more Emily honed her craft, the more she felt the pressure build. Her heart raced at the thought of the contest unveiling her fragile spirit. What if her drawings reflected only her insecurities? Each imaginative vision seemed distorted by the nagging fear they held no merit beyond her closed-off world. Do you even have what it takes? The internal critic would whisper just when she was on the cusp of feeling good about her work. What makes you think you can compete? Determined not to be consumed by those thoughts, she made a decision. She would confront those doubts head-on. Gathering her courage, she imagined standing before the bikers, the very symbols of bravery she had come to admire. What if she sought feedback? What if, instead of running from judgment, she invited it in? One late afternoon, she found herself standing near the edge of the park, watching them congregate after a ride. Her heart fluttered erratically, an insecure bird trapped in her chest. In that moment, she made a choice. Clutching her latest sketches, she approached them, her hands trembling not just from fear, but from the possibility of connection. The rebellious riders, right? I might have some drawings. Her voice nearly faltered, the weight of her inadequacies teetering on the edge of her words. Could I show you? Their initial surprise morphed into curiosity. One of them, a woman with intricate tattoos winding up her arms, stepped closer. Sure, kid. Let us see what you've got. With each passing moment, Emily unveiled her works, each piece a fragment of her heart, a tribute to her father and an exploration of the world around her. Silence fell over the group, but whispers of approval began to surface amidst the tension. She awaited their critique, every second stretching interminably, her stomach twisting in knots. Kid, these are unexpected, the biker said finally, a slight grin creeping across her face. You got a raw talent, and I see strength in these pieces. Don't doubt it. Beneath her nervous exterior, the flicker of pride ignited. Each word, an affirmation that began to dismantle the wall of uncertainty brick by brick. Maybe, just maybe, the contest wasn't the monster she feared. Perhaps it was an opportunity for something more profound, an unveiling of herself that she hadn't fully dared to pursue until now. As she walked away, bolstered by their encouragement, a new resolve began to take root in her heart. The art contest didn't just represent validation. It symbolized her willingness to embrace vulnerability, not just the fear of rejection, but the strength of expression itself. With the date of the contest drawing near, Emily found herself at a crossroads of profound realization. It was time to embrace who she was fully, not just as a girl with colored pencils, but as a creator of stories. But something held her back, a lingering whisper that urged caution. As she stood before the mirror that evening, she wrestled with one final question. Would she dare to take the leap onto the stage she had been dreading, or allow her fears to trap her once more in the shadows? The moment of truth was fast approaching. Would she seize this opportunity or retreat? The weight of the decision bore down heavily. Her next choice could change everything. Emily awoke on a Sunday morning that felt charged with anticipation. As sunlight poured into her room, it illuminated the sketches pinned to her walls, evidence of her growth and struggle. Each drawing was a testament to her resolve and a reminder of the fears she was fighting against. The art contest was mere days away, and the nerves swirled within her like a relentless storm. For the first time, she was stepping toward a world that demanded visibility. Time had warped her perceptions, transforming timid strokes into bold declarations, though self-doubt still lurked in the corner of her mind. As she stared into the mirror, determination tempered her anxiety. She no longer wanted to be just the girl behind the drawings. She aimed to be the author of her narrative. With a quick breakfast, she grabbed her sketchbook and stepped into the crisp air of the park. The laughter of children no longer felt like distant echoes of her own childhood. They were grounding reminders of innocence, something she was adamant to capture in her art. Today, the rebellious writers would be gathering in the same spot as always, but she was no longer just an observer. She was a participant in her own story now. Approaching the familiar congregation, heart racing, she felt a mix of exhilaration and dread. But as she neared, the encouragement from last week played in her mind like a mantra. "You've got raw talent." The words resonated, drowning out the whispers that told her she wasn't good enough. "Hey," she called out, catching the attention of the riders. They turned, curiosity mingling with the rumbles of their bikes. The woman with the tattoos, who had previously encouraged her, stepped forward. "Back again, kid? I've been working on more sketches," Emily replied, heart pounding. Each word felt like a bridge she was building, connecting her to a world she yearned to be part of. "Can I show you?" As she spread out her sketches on a nearby bench, the bikers surrounded her, their presence imposing yet strangely comforting. The initial silence felt heavy, but she stayed rooted, willing to confront her fear of judgment head-on. With each image she unveiled, she didn't just reveal art. She laid bare fragments of her soul, her admiration. Her grief blended into the strokes. "Wow," one of the writers muttered, examining a sketch of a child playing beside a motorcycle, a juxtaposition of innocence and rebellion. "There's a story here." Joy flared within Emily. "That's what I wanted, stories behind the faces," she explained, feeling the warmth of connection bridging the gap between them. The woman with tattoos spoke again. "You're capturing not just the surface. There's depth in what you do. Have you thought about how you'll show this in a contest?" Emily hesitated. She had envisioned a narrative, but the execution felt daunting. "How do I make it resonate with the judges? What if they don't see what I see?" "Trust in your voice," the woman insisted, her gaze unwavering. "Art is subjective. You need to give them your truth without filters." Emily processed the advice, a flicker of understanding igniting within her. She needed to embrace her authenticity, to strip her work of expectation, focusing instead on what truly mattered to her. It was raw, it was personal, and that would speak louder than any polished surface. With renewed clarity, she packed her sketches and finally felt the weight of the contest lift slightly. Perhaps it was not about winning or losing, but about connecting, about revealing her journey to the world, the struggles and triumphs alike. As she turned to leave, a sense of urgency tinged the air, urging her forward. The moment of stepping onto that stage pulled closer, and she felt the gravitational pull of her ambition working alongside fear. Would she continue choosing the safety of shadows or step into the light, vulnerably exposed, yet undeniably alive? Her heart raced as she whispered to herself, "I am ready." But as she reached her car, doubt fleetingly pricked at her mind again. Would she truly be able to showcase her truth under the scrutinizing gaze of others? The looming contest was just days away. What would she do when the spotlight was finally hers to embrace or to shy away from? The answer lay within her reach, just waiting for the courage to claim it. It was time to decide whether she would step boldly onto the stage or retreat once more into the confines of insecurity. Emily's week unfolded in a blend of fervor and trepidation. Each day, she awoke to the same sun flooding her room, yet the warmth no longer felt like a mere comfort. It radiated a burgeoning force within her that prodded her forward, spurring a transformation that she had feared was merely fantasy. The countdown to the contest became a rhythmic metronome in her life. marking the seconds as she meticulously fine-tuned her sketches, each stroke fueling her confidence. With every sketch, Emily felt the subtle shift of her hands as they moved with conviction across the pages. Gone was the timid artist who hesitated at every line. She worked to capture not only faces, but emotions, layering colors and textures that aligned with her burgeoning sense of self. This was more than just preparation. It was an exploration of her identity, unveiling facets of herself that she had long buried beneath doubt and insecurity. One evening, as twilight draped itself over the park, Emily sat alone on a bench, her sketchbook resting in her lap. She wondered why she felt such a visceral connection to the bikers. They were raw, unapologetic, yet grounded in a palpable sense of community. Did they see something in her that she had yet to acknowledge in herself? This thought lingered, igniting an ember of hope within her. Suddenly, a soft voice interrupted her reverie. "You all right?" The woman with tattoos approached, her presence radiating a fierce yet comforting energy. Emily hesitated, but the sincerity in her voice inspired a moment of clarity. "I'm just feeling the weight of it all," she confessed, surprising herself with the ease of vulnerability. "The pressure's real," the woman agreed, sitting beside her. "But remember, pressure creates diamonds." What is important isn't winning. It's telling your story. The gravity of those words struck Emily. She had been measuring herself against external expectations, crafting her art for the judges rather than for herself. What if she redefined the contest in her mind? Instead of fearing the gaze of critics, she could embrace the opportunity to share her truth. "Okay," Emily said, determination bubbling to the surface. "I want to tell my story." "Then do just that," the woman encouraged. "If you're authentic, they'll connect with you. Create from your heart, not from fear." With renewed resolve, Emily dove headfirst into her sketches, allowing her intuitive instincts to guide her hands. Each evening became a dance of creation. She imported elements of her childhood, her struggles, and her dreams into the narrative of her drawings. She found herself painting with a frenetic energy, skip-hop dancing through joy and sorrow, laughter and tears. The night before the contest, Emily felt a shift. She no longer viewed her upcoming moment as a trial, but as an unveiling. She took a breath, recognizing she had molded her own narrative through her art. This clarity transformed her anxiety into excitement. Was there anything more cathartic than claiming her voice? But doubts gnawed at her still. Would her voice resonate in a crowd? The disparity between the raw confidence she felt in solitude and the vulnerability she would face on stage haunted her thoughts. The day arrived, with Emily stepping into the venue, her heart thudding in a rhythmic protest against uncertainty. The air buzzed with anticipation, and in that moment, everything hinged on a single choice. Would she step onto that stage, bearing her soul to a sea of strangers, or retreat back into her comfort zone? She took a deep breath and clutched her sketchbook to her chest. "I can't go back," she thought, heart pounding in time with her resolve. "This is my moment." As the muted clamor of the crowd reached her ears, Emily's spirit flared, ready to take that leap, but the weight of uncertainty loomed large, begging her to reconsider. The spotlight flickered to life, and in that moment, she had to confront her greatest fear. Would she rise to meet the challenge and share her truth, or would she remain shackled by the chains of self-doubt? The stage awaited her, a blank canvas, begging to be filled. Emily stood at the edge of the stage, her breath shallow and rapid, her heart a drum echoing the intoxicating mixture of fear and exhilaration. The audience's chatter faded into a soft hum as she fought against the rising tide of anxiety that threatened to sweep her back into the shadows. This moment, the one she had longed for, prepared for, and ultimately feared, was unfolding right in front of her. As the spotlight warmed her skin, she thought of the sketches that filled her sketchbook. They weren't merely drawings. Each one was a fragment of her journey, a whisper of her story yearning to be heard. A young girl's spirit surged within her, pushing against the doubts that had accompanied her all her life. With every second that passed, The weight of her insecurities felt both constricting and liberating. But as she gazed into the sea of faces, a realization struck her like a lightning bolt. These people were strangers, yes, but they also craved connection. Just like her, they were searching for honesty, authenticity, a piece of their own narrative interwoven into hers. This was not just about her. It was about the shared human experience, the stories that fluttered beneath the surface of every sketch she had created. Then, without thinking, she stepped forward onto the platform, her stance gaining solidity. She could feel the wood beneath her feet, the coolness that grounded her. In that moment of decision, she realized how much she had grown. She was no longer the hesitant artist that had sketched merely for approval. She was an artist seeking to share a deeply personal tale. "Hi, I'm Emily," she began, her voice surprisingly steady. "I'm here to tell you my story through my art." With those words, a gentle wave of comfort washed over her, infusing her with the courage to articulate not only her past, but also her present aspirations. One by one, her sketches unfurled in her mind, visual stories that illustrated her journey, how she grappling with identity, her battles with self-doubt, and her celebration of authenticity. Yes, she spoke. Emily consciously directed her voice toward the feelings these sketches represented. She moved through her narrative, detailing the joy in her interactions, the heartache in her struggles, and how each moment culminated in this very presentation. Her sketches transformed into a language of their own, each stroke echoing her inner thoughts. Yet even while she shared, anxiety crept back in. What if they didn't connect with her? What if her emotions felt too vague, too personal for an audience of strangers? Emily pressed on, determined to confront these nagging thoughts. In a rush of vulnerability, she tore down an invisible wall, revealing the raw essence of who she was. Suddenly, a soft clearing of the throat broke her concentration. She looked towards the front row and caught the gaze of a man who appeared utterly engaged, a small smile on his lips. Intrigued and comforted, she could see the reflection of her emotional journey within him. Perhaps he had experienced something similar. This realization propelled her to connect deeper, to explore the heart of her art even more. As the last whisper of her art flowed from her mouth, Emily felt an unexpected rush of catharsis, a release that felt like liberation. She had conquered her fear, but yet uncertainty lingered. Would they applaud, or would they sit in silence? The response felt monumental, raw, and fragile. And then, just as quick as the doubt sowed itself back in her mind, a thunderous applause broke around her, a wave of acceptance that crashed like surf against her heart. In that moment, Emily grasped something powerful. Her identity as an artist was not solely defined by creation, but also by connection. As the clapping enveloped her, merging with her heartbeat, another thought crept in. This was merely the beginning. Challenges awaited, both in her artistry and personal life. How to sustain this newfound courage? Would she dare to venture into more risky narratives, or was she merely uncovering layers of herself that she had yet to explore? As the applause faded into a rhythmic echo, Emily stood on the brink of her next meaningful decision, her mind racing with possibilities. She had opened a door, but now the journey ahead seemed daunting yet exhilarating. Was her voice loud enough to withstand the next storm? Or would this newfound resolve withstand the trials to come? Emily lingered on the stage for a moment longer, feeling the echoes of applause tickle her skin. The exhilarating rush began to dissipate, replaced by the weight of uncertainty. She stepped off the stage, the chatter resuming around her like bustling traffic, energizing the atmosphere, yet contrasting sharply with her inner turmoil. Outside the warm glow of the spotlight, self-doubt began to unfurl within her anew. She wandered towards a corner of the venue, seeking solace amidst the vibrant cacophony. It felt surreal, this blend of triumph and trepidation. Could she authentically carve out a space for herself in this world? After having dared to be so vulnerable, she pulled out her sketchbook, its worn pages filled with memories and unfiltered emotions. As she flipped through the sketches, they unveiled a deeper truth, an unwavering quest for identity, longing to be shared. But that were the echoes of applause now reverberated into her mind, stirring a question. Was she truly prepared to voice the stories buried beneath each stroke? A rush of excitement coursed through her veins. She could speak of sadness in her drawings, of joy, and of the in-betweens that defined her existence. That evening, Emily sought out her mentor, the very artist who had inspired her to connect experiences through her art. Their conversations had always sparked the flame of creativity, but today Emily felt they would guide her through a different path, one that confronted her fears head-on. "Emily, you've got the talent," Tom said, his thick gray beard framing a smile. "But it's not just about what you create. It's about the courage to share what lies behind that creation." The words, though familiar, struck deeper this time, igniting a flicker of determination in her heart. She considered Tom's advice carefully as he continued narrating his own journey of transformation, marked by moments of vulnerability and courage that seemed intertwined, like the threads of her sketches. "What would happen if you took the leap?" he urged, cupping his hands as if to hold the question's gravity. "What if you took those raw, personal stories you're afraid to share and put them out there?" The idea rattled and excited her, but her internal voice stuttered questions of security. What if people didn't connect? What if they didn't understand? What if they misunderstood her intent? "Fear can be a great anchor or a fierce wind in your sails," Tom added, seamlessly reading her anxious thoughts. That night, sleep evaded her as she wrestled with the gravity of his words, pondering how to harness her fears rather than allowing them to constrict her. Days turned into weeks, and each moment of hesitation solidified the urgency she felt to act. She realized that her hidden capabilities lay not just in artistic competence, but in her seismic capacity for vulnerability. This realization galvanized her. Her sketches became not just the climax of her journey, but also the beginning of an uncertain expedition. One afternoon, with the late sunlight washing a golden hue over her workspace, Emily set a deadline for herself. She would choose a subject, one rooted in an experience that had left its mark on her, and delve deep into the vulnerability it demanded. She chose the theme loss and renewal, the thread woven through the very essence of her being. She began to sketch, each line transformed into a cathartic release. She began to see her fears morphing into something powerful, driving her hand with newfound purpose. But lingering doubts nagged at the edges of her resolve. Was she strong enough to present this work, to be scrutinized once again by an audience? Just as she was flourishing amidst her creative breakthrough, the notification ping of her phone broke through like a thundercrack. A message from the platform where she had originally showcased her work appeared, inviting her back. They wanted her to present a series based on her artistic journey, her very essence laid bare to a fresh audience. Her heart raced, churning through a cyclone of questions, doubts, and undeniable excitement. Emily stood at yet another precipice, and opportunity for real connection awaited. Yet so did the fear of exposure. Yes, she hovered at the edge of a decision. The artistic world beckoned her forward. But would she uncover an empowering new layer of herself, or remain imprisoned by the very fears she sought to overcome? The choice gnawed at her spirit, and the moment for action drew near. Could she bear to face her truth once more in the light? Or would she retreat into the shadows, clutching her heart as well as her sketches? Would this be her moment to finally embrace the artist within? The choice loomed large, and time was slipping away. Emily paced the confined space of her studio, the invitation lingering like a breathing entity, challenging her resolve. It was as if the walls themselves were pushing her toward an inevitable fate, echoing the haunting whispers of her fears. The urge to shrivel back into the protective cocoon of anonymity tangled with a fierce ember of determination. What had she demonstrated on stage, if not her willingness to lay herself bare? With each turn, the light from the window caught her sketches, casting shadows that mimicked her internal battle. The theme of loss and renewal pulsed beneath the surface, an echo of her past. pushing her toward confrontation. Each completed drawing resonated with layers upon layers of emotion, each stroke a small rebellion against the self-doubt festering within her. But what if those layers were too raw, exposing her hidden scars to an audience who might never understand? The stillness shattered as her phone buzzed again, yanking her from introspection. It was a message from Sarah, a fellow artist and friend, eagerly spilling over with excitement about the revival of creative evening meetups. "You must join us," Sarah wrote. "This is the support group we need to evolve together." Emily's mind raced. Could this newfound community be the very thing she needed, a buffer against the often harsh scrutiny of the broader audience? Perhaps facing her peers first, in a space where she wouldn't just be presenting, but collaborating, could soften the impending plunge into vulnerability with strangers. It was risk wrapped in safety, a calculated move. She quickly typed a reply, committing herself to the gathering, making plans with Sarah for the coffee shop that would serve as their canvas for the evening. The decision was impulsive but exhilarating, igniting a spark of energy within her. She could test the waters before exposing herself to a world that felt all too daunting. As the evening approached, Emily dressed with intention, a reflection of the anticipation brewing inside of her. She combed through her sketches, selecting a few that captured the essence of her theme. These weren't just works of art. They were pieces of her soul, tangible representations of her experiences and growth. The act of gathering these pieces stirred a fear, but it was quickened with a flicker of excitement. The cafe buzzed with hushed conversations and the aroma of coffee. Artists swayed in their own worlds, yet an undercurrent of camaraderie enveloped the space. When Emily arrived, the familiar faces of her friends ignited a flutter of comfort. She settled into the corner, sketchbook poised on her lap, surrounded by chatter that blended into a symphony of encouragement. As the group shared their journeys, Emily's reluctance began to dissolve. The stories flowed like tributaries, weaving threads of connection. There was humor in their trials, gravity in their fears, and above all, a shared understanding that art was more than a solitary expression. It was a shared dialogue among broken pieces of humanity. As each artist unveiled their work, Emily's gaze flickered between admiration and longing. Deep within her, a wrestling match ensued. This was her moment, her chance to reveal the parts of herself that she had contained for so long, but would the outcome affirm her or break her? At last, as the group turned to her expectantly, she felt the insistent thrum of her heartbeat. It was a reminder that she had come this far, a silent testament that she owed it to herself to take the leap. The familiar grip of fear squeezed her, but as she opened her sketchbook, an unexpected calm washed over her. As she shared her sketches, there was a vulnerability in her voice, layered with newfound strength. She breathed in the support radiating from those around her, and for the first time, the fears didn't drown her. They lifted her, transforming her insecurities into a bridge for others to cross into her world. The night flowed, and Emily began to understand that vulnerability was not merely exposure. It was a connective thread. The realization hit her that this was a step toward the potential of her presentation to a larger audience. The resolve began to settle, fierce and clear, within her. But just as she thought she had ignited a sturdy flame of confidence, she received another notification, a text from Tom, her mentor. It contained a single question. "Are you ready to share your true self?" She paused, her heart dropping, a wave of fear flooding back. Was she ready to confront the world anew? Would her leap resonate beyond the confines of her supportive group? The night deepened, a lingering tension punctuated by the chime of the cafe's clock, ticking toward her decision point. Would she spring forward, armed with her stories, or retreat once more into the shadows of doubt? The choice clung to her, heavier than before, demanding a response that would define her path. Emily closed her sketchbook, the weight of Tom's question pressing against her mind like a suffocating blanket. The cafe buzzed around her, but her thoughts spiraled inward, searching for an answer that eluded her grasp. She had laid bare her fears, shared her journey with friends who understood, But the impending request to share that same authenticity with strangers felt like standing on the precipice of a cliff. What had she truly uncovered during the evening? The warmth and camaraderie of her peers had ignited flickers of self-assurance, yet a shadow curled at the edges of her newfound clarity. Did vulnerability truly equate to strength, or did it merely expose one's inadequacies? Each artist's story, while buoying her, had also exposed another layer of comparison, deepening her uncertainties. Feeling trapped in her own head, she took a sip of her lukewarm coffee. The bitter taste brought her back to the present, but it did little to assuage her turmoil. What would she say to Tom when she replied? Would she let him see the uncertainty that twisted just under her surface? Or would she mask it with bravado, framing her response as if she had everything figured out? Settling back in her chair, she began to draw absent-mindedly, her pencil tracing lines that expressed the chaos within. Each stroke resonated with unarticulated thoughts, a visual language that captured her unease. She could feel the rhythm of the pencil against the paper, almost like a heartbeat, a reminder that she was alive and searching for clarity. The art surrounding her became a sanctuary, igniting memories of isolation in the past, when she had reserved her work solely for her own eyes. It was easier to hide, to cloak her vulnerabilities with distance. But tonight had altered that. The emotions stirred by the support of laughter and shared experiences had forced her to confront not just her art, but herself. As she gathered her reflections, Emily's surroundings began to melt away. The echoes of laughter faded into a hum, and a single thought crystallized. She had always sought connection through her work. The visceral bond she shared with art was a direct conduit to her spirit. If she could bring that truth to the larger audience Tom hinted at, perhaps the act of unveiling herself would not only be an exposing of her insecurities, but also a forging of new connections. Deciding to take action, she took out her phone and typed back to Tom, heart racing as she hit send. I think I'm ready. I want to share not just my work, but the stories behind it. Let us talk. An overwhelming sense of relief washed over her, as if she pulled free of a weight that had tethered her for too long. In that moment, she realized that sharing her authentic self was not just about showing her art. It was about sharing her journey, her growth, her humanity. The shadows might still linger within her, but now she understood they didn't need to define her path. As night deepened and the cafe began to empty, Emily felt a flicker of transformation brewing within. The edges of her insecurities softened slightly, replaced by a burgeoning curiosity about what lay ahead, a world beyond the intimate gathering that had nurtured her soul. With newfound vigor, she envisioned standing in front of an audience, pouring out the depths of her narratives, crafting a story that could resonate with others trapped in silence. The idea of it excited her more than it scared. An exhilarating sense of purpose ignited beneath her rib cage. But just as the ember of ambition sparked brightly within, a sudden chill swept across her heart as she contemplated the next step. What if the audience didn't connect with her? What if they misunderstood? As soon as the possibilities of rejection flickered into view, her resolve wavered. The clock chimed softly in the background, each tick echoing loudly like a countdown to a moment she could not yet comprehend. Would the leap she had just committed to evolve into something liberating or merely solidify her fears? A tight knot of anxiety returned, whispering that the true challenge had only just begun. With her heart racing once more, she sensed the familiar weight of doubt creeping back in her mind. What awaited her beyond her carefully curated designs? The choice to reveal all loomed large, and the moment of truth was now closer than ever. The following days felt like a twisted blend of exhilaration and dread. Emily found herself alternating between excited anticipation and paralyzing insecurity. Each morning, she awoke with the knowledge that soon, her work and the stories behind it would be laid bare to an audience. She tried to muster confidence, recalling the warmth of the cafe and the camaraderie that had fueled her decision. Yet, as the date approached, the solidity of that assurance crumbled like sandcastles before an approaching tide. In her apartment, the walls seemed to close in around her, suffocating the vibrant energy she had once felt toward her art. The sketchbook that had previously felt like a sanctuary sat closed on her desk, collecting dust, a stark reminder of her self-doubt. With each passing day, the vivid strokes and swirling colors in her mind dulled, overshadowed by the heavy weight of impending exposure. What if they don't connect with my message? She muttered to herself one evening, pacing her small living room. What if they laugh? Or worse, what if they don't care? Fear dripped from her words, pooling around her feet like an inescapable anchor, dragging her back into the depths of uncertainty. The need to confront these anxieties grew. With her palms pressed against the cool surface of the desk, she reminded herself that vulnerability was not a weakness, it was an opportunity for growth. Reflecting on the stories shared among artists during that fateful night in the cafe, Emily understood that each artist had laid bare their souls in a quest for connection. She couldn't turn her back on that. Attenuating her fears meant risking judgment, but the reward could be deeper interactions that transcended the canvas. Determined to cultivate resilience, she opened her sketchbook, drawing not her usual designs, but symbols that represented her journey, the darkness and the light, the fear and the resolve. As her pencil danced across the pages, a sense of empowerment bubbled beneath her skin. It occurred to her that these personal symbols, once mere worries, could serve as critical pieces of her narrative, adding depth to the presentation she would eventually give. Days turned into an urgent blur of creativity, where she enchanted herself with flashes of inspiration. She composed her thoughts in a storyboard fashion, layering visuals with words drawn from her heart, illuminating her path toward authenticity. Each completed sketch breathed life into her understanding of both her artwork and herself, revealing the intricate tapestry of her experiences. Yet, amid this blooming transformation, a haunting realization crept in. Was her narration strong enough to withstand scrutiny? Emily sought reassurance, reaching out to Tom once more. "Can we discuss what to expect?" She typed, hesitant but resolute. His reply came swiftly, echoing a sense of confidence that steadied her trembling spirit. "Absolutely. Let us strategize together. You got this." The day of reckoning approached, a looming specter that simultaneously thrilled and terrified her. A gnawing tension coiled in her stomach, clenching tighter as she envisioned the audience sitting before her, their faces both supportive and judging that on the eve of the presentation. Emily sat cross-legged on her floor, surrounded by sketches that swirled into a chaotic cyclone of ideas. The clock ticked softly in the background, punctuating her thoughts in a rhythm that harmonized with her escalating heartbeat. Could she truly convey her essence? Each envisioned smile felt like a warm blanket, yet each breathless moment tightened the screws of anxiety. "Are you ready?" she whispered to herself, embracing the uncertainty that tinged her voice like the first brushstroke on a blank canvas. It was an acknowledgement of her fear rather than a denial of it. She prepared her notes for tomorrow, her resolve crystallized. Today she may still be adrift between vulnerability and strength, but tomorrow she would take the reins. The quiet chaos of her mind steadied in that engaging moment, leaving her heart whispering a message she would carry into the unknown. It's time to face the truth within and perhaps uncover a connection with others who needed to hear her story. The light outside her window dimmed, sinking into twilight, and still she was left with one glaring truth. The real act of courage lay not just in performing her art, but in acknowledging that her voice or journey was as important as the art itself. As she slipped into bed, a new question lingered, raw and unsettling. Would she find acceptance or rejection in the hearts of her audience? The moment of truth loomed, tantalizingly close, yet filled with the weight of fate that could reshape her future. The contest day arrived with an electric sense of anticipation crackling in the air. Emily stood in front of the mirror, utterly transformed. She gazed at her reflection, the once timid girl, now replaced by a confident artist ready to unveil her story. The uncertainty that had once anchored her was now replaced with a profound understanding of her journey. Each challenge had forged a resilience she had yet to fully appreciate, As she stepped into the venue, the bustling crowd buzzed intensely around her. She could feel her pulse racing. However, with each heartbeat, a mantra surfaced in her mind. This isn't just about the art. It's about connection. She had come to realize that her story, woven into every sketch, held the power to resonate with others. Moments before her presentation, Emily took a deep breath. Her sketchbook cradled against her chest like a shield, and a sword, a combination of vulnerability and strength. The stage suddenly felt less daunting. She envisioned the bikers, their encouragement echoing in her heart. She remembered their belief in her raw talent and the strength of character she admired. That very belief propelling her forward, emboldened her steps. When her name was called, she ascended the stage, her heart pounding rhythmically against the silence of the crowd. The spotlight warmed her, and she stood tall, a feeling of unwavering confidence enveloping her. The audience was an amalgamation of strangers, but they were also potential friends, each pair of eyes seeking the same connection she craved. As she opened her sketchbook, she felt the familiar hum of creativity, each sketch representing not just herself, but also the stories of others intertwined within them. "Hello," she began, her voice steady. "I'm Emily. This is my story told through art." A hushed stillness fell over the crowd. The intimacy of the moment knit them closer together. One by one, Emily unveiled her drawings, revealing not merely images, but layers of emotion, the longing for her father, the feeling of isolation, and the empowerment that grew with every stroke of her pencil. She immersed them in her raw experiences, and as she spoke, an undeniable shift occurred. The audience appeared entranced, visibly engaged in her narrative. With every sketch, she felt her anxieties fade, replaced by a sense of catharsis. It was as if the applause she received internally set ablaze the burdens she had carried. The weight of judgment transformed into a pulse of connection. Every whisper in their gaze assured her she wasn't merely sharing her art, but engaging them in a sacred dialogue. Finally, when she completed her presentation, the applause that erupted felt like an explosion of validation, an adrenaline rush that swept through her. For the first time, she comprehended that her worth wasn't tied to accolades, but to her courage to share her journey with sincerity. Then came the awards ceremony, a moment when Emily felt her breath catch in anticipation. As the categories were called, she felt herself slip into a reverie, overcome by gratitude for the journey she had taken rather than the outcome. Whether her name was called or not, she understood the true victory lay in her growth, in facing the stage and sharing her truth to her astonishment. When the winner of the category for innovation and artistry was announced, her name rang through the air. Joy enveloped her, enveloping her with warmth and pride. As she approached the stage to claim her recognition, she reflected on how she had not only developed as an artist, but as a person capable of confronting her fears head-on. This contest had transformed from a threat into an opportunity, a bridge to self-acceptance. Standing on the stage, holding her award, Emily grasped the significance of the moment. She wasn't a shy girl uncertain of her abilities anymore. She was an artist, a storyteller, and a force to be reckoned with. Looking out at the audience, a sense of fulfillment washed over her. She had not only achieved something great, but had also inspired others to recognize their own stories. In that realization, she found an enduring strength within. Emily stepped off the stage, the applause echoing behind her. That applause wasn't just for the sketches she had presented. It was for the strength she had summoned from within herself, a realization that rendered every second of self-doubt worthwhile. She was transformed, accomplished, and ready to embrace whatever came next on her artistic journey. This is the moment to connect with your own story. You need to subscribe now to this channel. Don't wait even one more second. Leave a like to fuel our algorithm, and ensure you see more empowering narratives like Emily's. Comment below with your reactions and thoughts about how you would face your own fears. And share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to witness this incredible journey of transformation. Let us inspire more hearts with true stories of resilience.